Margaret stood by the kitchen table, absent-mindedly stirring her coffee in her favorite mug. The morning light filtered through the blinds, casting thin stripes across the wooden floor. The house was silent. Her entire life seemed to have paused in this early hour, yet beneath this calm exterior, a storm of emotions raged inside her. She knew. She had known for a long time. Her husband, the man she had spent 22 years with, was cheating on her. And not just once. Not with just one woman, possibly not even with two. Once, she had hoped that these were just fleeting affairs, a midlife crisis, that he would come to his senses and return to their family. But the years passed and nothing changed. She turned a blind eye, not because she was weak or afraid of being alone, but because their family life, despite everything, was too familiar. Their children loved their father. They grew up in a cozy home, even if there was no passion between their parents. Destroying all of that would be too painful. But lately, something had shifted. Maybe it was because the kids had moved out and the house felt too big and empty. Maybe it was because her husband had stopped even pretending to hide his affairs. He no longer bothered with believable excuses, no longer put in the effort to maintain the illusion of marriage. Margaret set down her cup and turned toward the door as she heard footsteps rustling in the hallway. Her husband, David, tall, self-assured, still an attractive man despite his age, walked in. There was a time when she had admired his smile, his confidence, the way he commanded any room he entered. Now, it only irritated her. "Breakfast is ready," she said without looking up. David glanced at his watch and shook his head. "Sorry, I have to leave early. Work's a mess." Margaret slowly turned her head and looked at him. She had long since learned how to read his lies. "You remember that Michael and his girlfriend are coming tonight, right?" Her voice was even, but inside, everything was boiling. David shrugged. "I'll see them later." "Later?" Her lips curled into a bitter smile. "Does this have anything to do with your new assistant, the tall blonde?" David froze. Something flickered in his eyes, something like annoyance. "Margaret, I'm not discussing this. Not in the morning, not before work." He set his half-finished coffee in the sink and left the kitchen. She heard him climbing the stairs, getting dressed in a hurry, jingling his keys. A couple of minutes later, the front door slammed shut. Margaret was alone. She sat down at the table, running her fingers over its smooth surface. 22 years. 22 years of building a life together. A home that once felt like a fortress. A business she had helped him start when they were young, ambitious, chasing success side by side. And yet, here she was, alone in this house. No partner, no friend. Just the ghosts of the past. For the first time, she realized she had been living in the shadows. She had settled, stopped growing. She had been a damn good economist once, passionate about her career. And suddenly, a thought blazed in her mind. It was time for a change. Not just a change, but a complete upheaval. David didn't come home that night. When he finally showed up the next day, Margaret met him at the door. He looked tired, but not remorseful. "Where were you?" Her voice was calm, steady. "At my mom's." She nodded. She had long stopped caring where he spent his nights. But today was different. "We need to talk." She crossed her arms over her chest. David sighed wearily. "Margaret, I'm exhausted. Not now." "No, now," she said, her voice firmer. "Let's get a divorce." Silence filled the room. David stared at her as if seeing her for the first time. "What?" "David, we've been living like roommates for years. I'm done. I'm done waiting, done with your indifference. I want my life back." He said nothing. Maybe for the first time, he realized that his wife was not just a convenient fixture in his life, that she could actually leave. Finally, he muttered, "We'll talk about this later. I have a business trip. I'll be back in a few weeks, and we'll discuss it then." Margaret simply nodded. When the door shut behind him, she didn't feel pain. She didn't feel regret. She felt relief. The next morning, she went to a salon for the first time in years. A new hair color, a fresh cut, a wardrobe update. When she looked in the mirror, she didn't see a worn-out housewife. She saw a woman ready to live again. And then back home, she opened her laptop and started looking for jobs. It was time to step back into the real world. Margaret had no idea what challenges lay ahead, but she knew one thing. She was no longer the woman who let a man treat her like furniture. Her new life had just begun. Margaret woke up the next morning with a heavy feeling in her chest. She stared at the ceiling, trying to process everything that had happened in the last 24 hours. Her decision to divorce David no longer felt impulsive. It felt like the only right choice. And while she had felt empty last night, today, determination was growing inside her. She slowly got out of bed, walked to the window, and looked outside. The summer morning was just beginning, people rushing about as usual. But her world had changed. For the first time in years, she didn't have to make breakfast for her husband, worry about his schedule, or pretend she was okay with their life. For the first time, she could focus on herself. Margaret went downstairs, brewed strong coffee, and opened her laptop. The first thing she typed into the search bar was jobs for economists. Her experience, her knowledge, it had once meant something. Now, it felt distant. She scrolled through listings until one caught her eye, a consulting position at a local firm. This was her chance. She took a shower, picked out a sharp but elegant outfit, and put on light makeup. Her reflection in the mirror seemed to say, "You've got this." Today was her first step into a new life. Later that evening, after returning home from an interview, Margaret was met with an unexpected visit. A tall, slender blonde stood at her doorstep, polished, younger, and wearing expensive perfume. She radiated confidence, but her eyes flickered with irritation. "We need to talk," the woman said, stepping inside without waiting for an invitation. Margaret crossed her arms, feeling a cold sense of calm settle over her. She had a good idea of who this was. "I'm listening," she said, shutting the door behind her guest. "I'm Lauren, your husband's assistant," the blonde announced, as if that introduction would change anything. "You need to take him back." Margaret nearly laughed. "Excuse me?" Lauren sighed dramatically, rolling her eyes. "He moved in with me, but honestly, I didn't sign up for this. A man who's fun in bed and entertaining at dinner is one thing, but when he's sitting in my apartment, expecting attention, breakfast, and complaining about his wrinkled shirts." She shuddered. "Not my thing. I thought he'd be more independent." Margaret studied her, recognizing the irony. She knew exactly what kind of man David was. He always expected to be taken care of. "So, you don't like being the woman?" Margaret allowed herself a small smile. Being the mistress was easier than being the wife? Lauren didn't answer, just pressed her lips together. "So, are you taking him back?" she asked. Margaret shook her head. "No, he's your problem now." And for the first time in years, she felt truly free. When Lauren woke up the next morning, the house felt unusually quiet. Mornings used to be filled with the sound of doors slamming, the rustle of newspapers, and the clinking of spoons against ceramic mugs. But now, the kitchen felt empty, and the air too crisp, as if the familiar scent of family life had faded away. She stretched, took a deep breath, and allowed herself a few minutes to savor this new, unfamiliar sense of freedom. For the first time in years, she didn't have to worry about making sure someone else felt comfortable. A small smile played on her lips as she got out of bed and headed for the bathroom. She knew today would be the start of a brand new chapter in her life. As coffee brewed, Lauren opened her laptop and scrolled through job listings. She had already sent out several resumes but hadn't heard back yet. Still, she wasn't discouraged. The job market in her field required patience and persistence. Her accounting experience and financial management skills had to count for something. A sudden knock on the door interrupted her thoughts. She frowned, not expecting anyone. When she opened it, there stood Jennifer, the blonde woman who had ultimately wrecked her marriage. "We need to talk," Jennifer said bluntly, skipping any pleasantries. Lauren crossed her arms and studied her. Jennifer looked nervous but was trying to keep up a confident front. "Mind if I come in?" she asked. Lauren hesitated for a moment, then stepped aside. They sat in the living room, and Lauren tilted her head slightly, waiting. "I'm listening." Jennifer ran a hand through her hair as if trying to figure out where to begin. "Look," she finally said, "I didn't think things would turn out this way. When Jack and I got together, he was different. Fun, attentive, but now..." She trailed off, searching for the right words. "Now I understand why you let him go." Lauren let out a dry chuckle. "He expects to be taken care of, his laundry done, his breakfast made. And if things don't go his way, he gets irritated and acts like a child. I don't want to be his babysitter," Jennifer blurted out. Lauren calmly took a sip of her coffee and smirked. "Well, Sounds like you've met the real Jack. Jennifer pressed her lips together. Could you take him back? He still says he misses you. Maybe you two have a chance to work things out? She asked hopefully. Lauren laughed. Are you serious? After everything that happened? No thanks. That chapter is closed. Jennifer looked disappointed. She had clearly been expecting a different answer. All right, she muttered. But just so you know, he's going to come to you himself soon, and I hope by then you'll reconsider. With that, Jennifer left. Lauren remained on the couch, shaking her head. She had no regrets. This was her chance to finally live for herself. Smiling, she turned back to her job search, knowing that something better was waiting for her. A few weeks had passed since Jennifer's unexpected visit, but Lauren didn't waste time dwelling on the past. She was focused on job hunting and rebuilding her life. Her home had settled into a peaceful rhythm, one she was slowly growing accustomed to. No slamming doors, no scattered clothes, no one demanding her attention. At first, the silence had felt strange, almost intimidating. But now, it was something she enjoyed. One morning, as she sipped her coffee, she finally got the call she'd been waiting for. It was a hiring manager from a well-known financial firm. They needed an experienced professional, and her resume had impressed them. Can you come in for an interview tomorrow? The woman on the phone asked. Of course, Lauren replied, trying to contain her excitement. She prepared carefully, choosing a sleek suit, refreshing her professional knowledge, reading up on the company. This was the opportunity she had been hoping for. The interview went well. She felt confident in her skills, and her years of experience made a strong impression. A couple of days later, her phone rang again. Welcome to the team, Lauren. It was her first major victory since the divorce. She decided to celebrate, ordering her favorite dinner from a nice restaurant and opening a bottle of wine. Life was finally moving in the right direction. But peace didn't last long. One evening, after her first day at work, she arrived home to find Jack standing by her front door, looking exhausted, a duffel bag in hand. Can we talk? He asked. Lauren folded her arms and gave him a long look. About what? About us. About how we made a mistake. She almost laughed. A mistake? You were sure about your choice. What happened? Jennifer didn't turn out to be as nurturing as you hoped? Jack frowned. This isn't funny, Lauren. I know I messed up. I want to fix things. She sighed. A long time ago, words like these would have gotten to her. She would have tried to find a middle ground, but not anymore. It's too late, Jack. I'm moving forward. You should too. He took a step closer. Don't you care that I've realized my mistakes? Don't you want to at least try again? Lauren shook her head. What I care about is that for the first time in years I'm actually happy, and I'm not going back to a life where my feelings come second. He opened his mouth as if to argue but stopped. Something in his expression shifted, like he was finally seeing her clearly for the first time. So this is really the end? He asked quietly. This is the end, Jack, Lauren said, her voice firm. She closed the door behind him and felt an overwhelming sense of relief. For the first time in a long time, she knew exactly what she wanted. And it wasn't the past. Lauren sighed, poured herself another glass of wine, and smiled. Her new life was just beginning. Almost a year had passed since the divorce, and Lauren felt like a completely different person. She had thrown herself into her work, earned a promotion, and gained the respect of her colleagues. Now she had a life she was proud of. No drama, no pain, no endless waiting for something that would never come. One evening after work, she stopped by a cafe for a latte. Scrolling through her phone, she suddenly heard a familiar voice. Lauren, is that you? She looked up and saw a man she hadn't seen in years. It was Andrew, her old college friend. They had lost touch long ago, but here he was, standing right in front of her. Andrew? Oh my God, how long has it been? She exclaimed. They sat down and started catching up. He had recently moved back to town after spending years working in Europe. He was still the same, charming, easygoing, with that familiar spark in his eyes. And you? He asked. How's life been treating you? Lauren thought for a moment. For the first time in years, she could honestly say, good, actually, great. They talked until late in the evening and exchanged numbers before parting ways. It was a meeting that would change everything. Over the next few weeks, they started seeing each other more often. Andrew invited her to dinners, walks, and weekend getaways. He was nothing like Jack. With him, she felt valued, heard, and most importantly, happy. One evening, as they sat in his living room with glasses of wine, Andrew looked at her seriously. "You know," he said, "I haven't felt like this in a long time. It's like my life has meaning again." Warmth spread through her chest. She smiled. "I feel the same way, Andrew." He reached for her hand. "Then what do you say we start something new? No past, no old mistakes. Just us." She didn't hesitate. She didn't need time to think. For the first time in years, she knew exactly what she wanted. She nodded. "Let's do it." This wasn't just a new relationship. It was a new chapter. A chapter where, for the first time, she chose herself. 2 years had passed since Lauren had signed the divorce papers. Her life was completely different now. She had found herself again, a strong, confident, independent woman who no longer lived in the shadow of her past. Andrew wasn't just her partner. He was her best friend, her rock. They traveled, made plans, laughed, and cherished every moment together. Everything felt different with him, safe, warm, effortless. One evening, as they sat on the porch of their countryside home, Andrew turned to her with a look she had never seen before. "Lauren, there's something important I want to say." He took her hand and took a deep breath. "You've made me the happiest man. You've given me faith in love, in family, in a future where I'm not alone, and I want to spend the rest of my life with you." He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box, opening it to reveal a ring, elegant, understated, exactly the kind she would have picked for herself. "Will you marry me?" he asked, his eyes filled with love. Lauren felt her breath hitch. She thought about everything she had been through, the years of pain, betrayal, and disappointment, but that was all behind her. Now she knew this was her new life, her new love, and she was happy. She smiled, tears of joy welling up in her eyes, and whispered, "Yes." Andrew laughed, lifted her off the ground, and spun her around. It was a moment she had never dared to hope for, but it had finally arrived. The past was behind her. All that lay ahead was a future filled with love, light, and endless possibilities. And this time, she knew she had made the right choice.